Obviously, that was a mistake, and that shouldn't have happened, and the White House is looking at it, but that none of the information on there at any point threatened the operation or the lives of our servicemen.
Joining us now, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks for coming back. You're already shaking your head as you listened to some of the spinning, the excuses, signal doesn't work. The Secretary of Defense suggesting that this was not a war plan. An attack plan is what we saw. It's on the front page of the New York Times this morning, which, as many analysts, including General Herdling, told us yesterday, an attack plan is much more specific than a war plan, giving dates, times, targets. So what do you make of not just the handling of what we've seen over the last couple of days, where you have even people in the MAGA media universe saying, guys, just say we made a mistake and move on, but they seem to want this to continue. But what are the national security implications of this? What are our allies thinking?
Well, this is so embarrassing. It makes America look so weak in the world. Everyone knows what happened here. It was a massive mistake. It was likely illegal, potentially criminal. Own up to it, fess up to it, move on. This probably could have been a one-day story if they had just admitted they made a mistake. They had pledged to make it better. They said they wouldn't use Signal any longer for transmitting classified information. But instead, as usual, it's the cover-up that becomes the story. I mean, it's really three scandals in one. One is the incompetence. And, by the way, Pete Hegseth wasn't covered in glory before this scandal. He's mismanaged almost everything he has touched. He's made America look weaker in the world since the minute he divulged America's negotiating bottom lines on Ukraine before we ever sat down at the negotiating table. It's a scandal because they basically are saying they're going to continue doing this. They haven't pledged to take their communications off Signal. And so they're basically telegraphing that they're going to continue to act illegally. And then the biggest scandal is really the scandal of the obliteration of objective truth, right? A democracy can't work if there aren't some facts on the ground that we agree on. Now, we're going to disagree on how to solve problems or how to interpret facts, but they're sitting there telling the American people that 2 + 2 = 7, that black is white. Those were attack plans. Those were war plans. That was classified information. Everybody knows it. And the idea that they think they can get away with this level of gaslighting, it just strikes at the foundation of democracy, which is a set of truths that we all have to operate off of.
So, Senator Murphy, you said a few minutes ago if they had dealt with it in one day, honestly, it would have been put behind them. But they didn't, obviously. So now what we have is we have a Secretary of Defense and the Vice President of the United States basically saying, they dislike Europe. Europe is a bunch of freeloaders, and we should stay away from Europe. And we have the Secretary of Defense, in his own verbal defense, sounds as if he's speaking on a Fox cable talk show rather than addressing the reality of his own obligation to admit to what's happened. What do we do? Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, listen, I was glad to hear one of my Republican colleagues in the Senate, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, say there's got to be an independent investigation. That's good. But this is criminal behavior, right? They likely violated multiple laws, the Espionage Act, the Presidential Records Act. And so there has to be criminal investigations as well here. I mean, if the criminal code doesn't apply to powerful people, it only applies to people without power, then we don't have rule of law in this country. And so you're seeing the unfolding scandals of this administration start to overlap, right? When the Department of Justice has been turned into, as it has been, just a political arm of the White House, this is what happens. People in power believe that they can get away with crimes and telegraph to the American people that they're going to continue doing it while the law continues to apply to everybody else. So we have to have a larger conversation right now in this country, not just about this discrete scandal, but about how the rule of law doesn't seem to be working in this country as it applies to the people that are close to Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, we'll be following this and also the concern that there are other group chats like this out there. And also, it'll be interesting to see, as Jeffrey Goldberg stated, what the American people think of this, especially those with loved ones who are serving in the military. So a lot of different angles to this. Senator, I want to jump to another topic right now. The Trump administration has lost its appeal and remains barred from using the Alien Enemies Act to deport migrants. A three-judge panel, federal appeals court panel, announced yesterday that it would not grant a stay on an earlier order that blocked the White House from using the wartime law to send alleged Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador. The decision was split 2-1. The lone dissent came from Judge Justin Walker, a Trump appointee. In a statement, a lawyer for the ACLU wrote, in part, the decision means that hundreds of more individuals will not be sent, perhaps for the rest of their lives, to a black hole notorious prison in a foreign country without any due process whatsoever. The Trump administration will likely ask the Supreme Court to review the case. Meanwhile, new video